Hey guys, so today I'm going to be doing a book review spoiler-free for The Glass Spare by Lauren DeStefano. Now, I received this book in my November Owl Crate box, and if it honestly wasn't for that box, I probably wouldn't have picked it up because I'd really hadn't heard of it, and I still haven't heard anything from it since. And also, I did take a chance reading a Lauren DeStefano novel with her back when I was in high school, and I really didn't like it. I don't remember what the book really was about, but I just remember the strong feeling of not liking it. So if I wasn't sent this in my Owl Crate box, I probably never would have read it, but I'm actually glad that I did. I did find myself enjoying it more than I thought, and overall I give it 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's highly likely that I will be continuing with this series once the other books come out. So this is the story of Will. Now, Will is a princess in this kingdom, and she's considered a spare. Her father really has no value for her other than being a spy. Her father doesn't really value any of the children except the eldest son, Owen, who will one day be king over the kingdom. Will is the daughter. He couldn't care less about her. Also, there is Gertie, who is her closest brother in age to her. He is only valued to the king for his alchemy skills. And then there's Baron, who is the second eldest son to the king, who really doesn't have any redeeming qualities that I have found so far in reading this book. So he has no value to the king, and a story of Will discovering that she has this power where when she touches things, they turn into gems. And that's where the synopsis on the inside flap kind of leads you. So that's kind of where I'll lead the synopsis of this story. Now, growing up, Will was already kind of an anomaly before this weird gemstone turning magic thing started happening. When she was born, she looked like a monster. Her older brother, Owen, actually refers to her as monster, like in an endearing kind of way. That's what he calls her. But there's just been some weird things. It almost seemed like she was cursed. She was supposed to die, but she didn't, and so there's always been this weird thing about Will. No one in the kingdom even really knows what Will looks like, because in this world, the heirs to the throne are at such great risk for keeping their lives that they really try to limit any pictures or portraits of any of the heirs, so no one outside of the immediate family and those who work at the castle even know what these prince and princesses look like. Which is why Will can kind of get away with being a spy, and it also helps that she doesn't look anything like anyone else in her family. I liked Will's character, I should say. I partly liked Will's character. I liked her more than I thought that I would. Will has a great sense for adventure, and she is just yearning to travel and wander the world, and she wants to see more than what her little small corner of the universe has shown her so far. She just really has this wanderer spirit about her. She's always pulled in by stories about other places, and so she desires so strongly to experience that for herself, and this book kind of sets her on that adventure. I also really liked Will's relationship with her brothers, especially Owen and Gertie. Gertie was really such a heartwarming character. He'd been sick a lot of his life, and so he was kind of protected in their family, but they have such a good sibling bond and relationship. And Owen, he's 10 years older than her. He's gonna be the king one day, but he still really cares deeply for his sister, and they have a really sweet relationship as well, but it is more like an older brother type of relationship. There are other characters that we are introduced to in this book as the story goes on. I'm not really gonna say too much about them, but I didn't really care for them. I definitely didn't like them in the beginning when they were introduced, and I thought I would start to like them eventually a little bit more than I did. Even by the end of the book, I thought they were okay, but I still didn't entirely believe them as characters. I want to talk a little bit about this fantasy world because there are some pretty unique elements to it. So most of the times when you read a fantasy novel, you're kind of in this whole world where there's no such thing as technology, but this is kind of a mixture of modern technological advances and like a fantasy setting. So it's kind of an up and coming era in this fantasy world. There are some telephones here and there, there's some automotive transport, there's trains, a couple planes, there's electricity. So it's kind of just like a world where it's starting to get these advances, which I just thought was really interesting because it's rare to read a fantasy book that has any modern elements at all. And I liked how this pulled those elements in while still keeping a fantasy setting. setting. And also I really liked this world. There is a really charged political climate in this story because there's the kingdom where Will is from, and there is war on the horizon with a southern nation. So you get to see different cultures of people, and I love the political intrigue in any novel. I think it adds a lot of fun elements. That's why I think Game of Thrones is so great, and I just really like that element, and that was in this story, and I think honestly that's what's keeping me interested to see how this whole story goes, and that's why I'm probably going to be reading the next book in the series. So let me go into some reasons why I couldn't give this book 5 stars. It just wasn't the most original fantasy story I found. I did think that it was boring in some parts, and I think there could have been more depth to Will's character. Also, there were just a lot of repetitive things stated kind of over and over again, to the point that I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I got it the first time you told me, you don't have to keep telling me. But just in some conversations Will had with characters, I felt like I was reading the same conversation multiple times. And then also just the inner monologue going on in Will's head, I thought that a lot of her thoughts were just repetitive. I just felt like some things were pretty predictable. Who characters turned out to be was predictable. I may not have been expecting it, but as soon as it happened, I kind of said, oh, duh, well, of course that would be this. So it's really hard to explain that without giving away spoilers, but if you've read this story, you probably know what I'm talking about. So that's my review for The Glass Spare. I just wanted to do a spoiler-free review for it because I hadn't heard like anybody talking about this book, and I wanted to know if anyone else had read it. But also, if you are thinking about reading The Glass Spare, I still think it was definitely worth the read. I'm not disappointed that I read it. I think it was a really great book to read over the weekend, but I'm really just curious if you have read it, what you thought about it. So please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and happy reading.